Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the County Administrator Issues and Updates for the Board of County Commissioners on September 27, 2022. Gary Schmidt, what's up?
Thank you, Chair Smith. First, Commissioner Schrader is out of the office today, and Commissioner Savis will be here shortly. But there is a quorum. We'll move forward. First, will you please convene as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County? Chair.
I will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County.
You are now meeting as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Joining you on Zoom is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra. Are you there, Ann?
I'm on board.
Welcome, Ann. These are requests for consent agenda. And who's from staff? Come on up, please. All right, first item, approval of an exclusive negotiation agreement with Related Northwest for the redevelopment of Hillside Park and Board Order 1972, delegating limited authority to the Executive Director to approve and sign time extensions provided for in the agreement. Fiscal impact is up to $100,000 if no disposition and development agreement is executed. Funding is through Metro Affordable Housing Bond Funds. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Devin Ellen, the Housing Director Program. I'm sorry, you manage Development Manager. Thank you, Devin. I apologize. Go ahead, please.
Sure. So I'm bringing forward today the exclusive negotiating agreement with Related Northwest. They were selected through a competitive RFEI process, and basically this document just allows us to negotiate further towards a development services agreement, which we will bring before you when it's finalized.
Questions or comments about this particular one? See no objections. Yes, Omar, I beg your pardon.
Okay, when you talk about development services, what kind of development are we talking about here?
This is the redevelopment of Hillside Park.
Is you talking about remodeling the building?
It's demolishing 100 units of public housing and redeveloping it with 500 units of housing, primarily affordable housing.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Item 2, approval of assignment addendums to transfer contracts with Clackamas County Women's Services, Impact Northwest, Northwest Family Services, El Programa Hispano, Calitico, and Greater New Hope Family Services to Clackamas County. Assignment has no fiscal impact. Combined contract value remains at $2,984,012. Funding is through the Supportive Housing Services Program. No county general funds are involved.
And basically, this is housekeeping. This is part of the process of moving things from Housing Authority over to the county and into the new division.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Leenstra. That is all for Housing Authority.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
And thank you. Next, Chair, would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District?
I will recess as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County and reconvene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
You are now meeting as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. These are also requests for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement to donate district-owned parcels of Mount Talbert Nature Park to Metro. Fiscal impact is $1,000 for closing costs. Funding is through district property tax assessments. No county general funds are involved. Mike Bork is the director of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to summarize, this is catching up work from May of 2020. After the Happy Valley settlement, these parcels that had been co-jointly bought with Metro were deemed to be essentially abandoned property. We're not going to be programming there. That was within the Happy Valley area. And so it had been part of our IGA agreement to transfer these approximately 5 acres of land to Metro. COVID happened, I'm assuming, and so we're just picking this up and getting this completed.
Questions or comments? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 2, ratification and affirmation as the Board of Directors of NCPRD of 5 contracts with various vendors previously approved by the Board of County Commissioners. No fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved. Mike, can you explain a little bit more about this, please?
Sure. As the results of an internal audit that we had done, there was a review of contracts that were signed, and these were simply part of a larger group that had been approved by the board, but not the board acting as the NCPRD board. There's only 5 of the many contracts that are still active, and so we're asking to clean this up for you to ratify the decision that you'd already made, but acting as the NCPRD board as you are now.
Questions or comments regarding this? I see on Invise, has expired June 30th of 2022 for aquatic equipment maintenance services. It says a 3-year extension option. Since that contract has expired, did you go ahead with the extension on that contract?
We had already done the extension before we found out about this.
So we've already approved the extension sitting under this district, but this particular one got missed.
Yes.
That's all the questions I have. Any others? Seeing no objections, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will now recess as the North Clackamas Parks Recreation District and reconvene as the Water Environment Services.
You are now meeting as the Water Environment Services Board. These are requests for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of a joint funding agreement with U.S. Geological Survey for Tualatin River water quality and flow monitoring. Agreement value is $51,080 for 5 years. Funding is through Water Environment Services, Surface Water Operating Fund, and the U.S. Geological Survey. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist is the Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning. This is a 5-year extension with the U.S. Geological Survey for water quality monitoring and flow monitoring in the Tualatin River Basin. We've had this relationship since 1999. The actual amount that we're funding is $32,000, and the remaining is coming from the USGS. We think it's valuable. Other cities in the region also participate in this program. Gives us a good picture of what's going on in the Tualatin.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
And then item 2, we're going to pull for further work, and we'll bring back to you in a future business meeting.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Chair, would you now convene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I'll recess as a Water Environment Services and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, you're now meeting as the Board of County Commissioners. This following are consent agenda requests. The items for under elected officials, there are 6, all for the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff has agreed to pull these because there's a little bit more work that needs to be done, and then we'll bring them back to you hopefully next week or the week after. So those will be removed from the agenda, but wanted to tell you that. So next would be disaster management. Item 1, approval of amendment increasing funding and extending duration of a subrecipient agreement with the City of Portland for the 2021 Urban Area Security Initiative. Amendment value is $237,660. The total agreement value is now $601,875. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. No county general funds are involved. Daniel Neibauer, Interim Director, Disaster Management. Go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioners, this amendment will allow us to have Oregon State Police be able to operate CAD to CAD so that their dispatch can talk to Clackamas County Dispatch and the other counties' dispatch and make more seamlessly the flow of information between dispatchers and responders.
During times of emergency?
Anytime, yes.
Anytime?
So,
And it's two-way communication?
yeah, it allows, if
If
someone's,
something happens in Clackamas County, they are able to notify our partners to the north saying this is what's going on.
yeah, that part exists. This incorporates Oregon State Police into that.
Excuse me?
It incorporates Oregon State Police into this so that if we get a 911 call in that goes to Oregon State Police, we can transfer the call there. Oregon State Police can transfer a call to us, and it makes the exchange of information seamless and response times quicker.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Mark?
This extension goes to what date?
May 1st, 2024.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no objections.
All right, next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Oregon Department of Transportation for use of the Baldock Maintenance Yard to stockpile materials for projects. No fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved. Mike Besner is the Assistant Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
As stated, it's permission from ODOT at no cost to use one of their maintenance yards so we could store materials and save money when we do our chip sealing program near Wilsonville.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Happy Valley for the Oregon Highway 212-224 intersection Rock Creek Interchange Improvement Project Study. Agreement value is $40,000. Funding is through the City of Happy Valley and the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this is a study just to work together, partner with Happy Valley to figure out other low-cost things we could do to the Rock Creek interchange in order to help development in the area proceed without hitting capacity problems.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Portland for the culvert replacement on 162nd Avenue, conveying Mitchell Creek. Agreement value is $10,000. Funding through the City of Portland and county road funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, City of Portland started working on this project without realizing it was actually a county culvert, and so they reached out to us. We are happy to contribute some staff time and get our culvert replaced.
Are they paying for it?
Yeah.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
Any other questions or
That's
comments?
great, government at its best.
Yeah. Seeing no objections, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment increasing funding of an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas Fire District Number 1 for Project Hope. The amendment value is $4,991. The agreement value is increased to $36,081. Funding is through the University of Baltimore Combating Opioid Overdose through Community Level Initiative Grant. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook is the Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead.
Yes, this request is to approve an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas Fire District Number 1 to help support a community paramedic to do the Project Hope program. The community paramedic role provides crucial follow-up visits to opioid overdose survivors in the home after an emergency medical phase of the call ends.
Rod, how much did it cost to apply for this? Because the agreement value is increased to $36,000 and amendment is, just under $5,000. And there used to be a policy, Gary, before, and I'm not sure if it's still applicable, that the amount of grant you apply for should at least be more in proportion to the effort that's put into applying for it. This is only worth $5,000.
Yeah, and this is actually us giving money to Clackamas Fire.
I see. Okay, I misread that. Got it. Okay, but the funding through the University of Baltimore, so we applied to the University of Baltimore?
I don't know, but, yeah,
I don't
know the
mind
history
giving
of
money
it.
to the fire department at all. I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I misunderstood, but even at $36,000,
Yeah, so we'll look into that, because we agree with you that
and maybe it was just a matter of, 5 minutes of paperwork, you push a button and send it electronically. Maybe that's all that's involved. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't do this, you
And
do.
we may be funding multiple fire districts, and this is just like we pull money in and then we just distribute it. So we'll look into that, because I understand what you're saying is like, at what point is it worth us applying? And so we will take that to heart.
Thank you. There's some other commissioners, but Gary, did you have a comment?
Yes, actually, item 3 on the consent agenda also addresses this. So the grant, we received a grant from the University of Baltimore for a total of $233,000. So it's a pretty significant grant, which we then distribute to the community for purposes of this work. It appears to be through community-level intervention of opioid work. So we've already received the grant. We're just now distributing it, in this case, to the fire district.
Well, this has been a good conversation. Thank you. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, I think Commissioner Scholl, did you do it right along with Project Hope?
I did.
I think Paul has, have you done?
I did.
This is an incredible program that really saves lives, and it connects people that have struggled with an overdose with the community paramedic who does follow-up. And our community paramedic is incredible. I love to see any and all resources that we can muster here, so I really want to appreciate the partnership between us and the fire district, and more opportunities as we move forward with supportive housing services dollars or any other resources that can go to support this effort. I think it's money well spent.
Thank you.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that for this relatively small amount of money, boy, I tell you what, Project Hope is really making a big difference in identifying people who have problems with opioid addiction. It's money well spent. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, this is a.
By the way, welcome, Commissioner
oh.
Savas.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, I was late.
No problems.
We have heard and continue to hear from our emergency responders, fire, paramedics, and sheriff and police officers responding to people in crisis, more so than ever before, where now it's becoming an overwhelming portion of their work like never before. So whatever kind of assistance we can provide, especially even with our supportive housing services dollars, ought to be looked at for helping them out, because they are, I think it's financially stressing each of those agencies as well, in a undue, unpredictable way, so to speak. Even though it's growing on us, it's becoming more and more of a burden. So however we can help, and really the help really boils down to the people in need. So.
Thank you. I think we are all in agreement of that. Good comments, Commissioner Savas. Seeing no objections to this.
Item 2, approval of an amendment reducing funding of an intergovernmental agreement with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue for Project Hope. The amendment value is $19,000. The agreement value is reduced to $16,490. That doesn't make sense. I'll let you explain that, Rod. Funding through the University of Baltimore Combating Opioid Overdose through Community Level Initiative Grant. No county general funds are involved. Same topic we've just discussed. Rod, can you clarify, please?
Yes, this amendment is to reduce the dollar amount issued to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue by $4,991, as they will not be able to spend all funding they were allocated.
Okay.
So it comes back to us then?
Yes, and
And
we'll
then what do we do
redistribute
with
it
it?
to a different fire
agency?
district who can spend it.
Any further questions or comments?
Is that a reflection of the crisis being more on the east side than the west side?
I'm not, I can get that information for you. My assumption is, yes, it's just the use was exactly what you're saying. It's being utilized, or we're seeing it more in one area than the other. And instead of returning the funds, we're just redistributing.
Yeah, I think, the geographic, the
Yeah.
demographics of the
It's playing into
geographic parts of Clackamas County, that's interesting. Thank you.
Seeing no objections to that moving forward. Next.
Item 3, approval of an amendment extending the duration and modifying budgeting of a research subaward agreement with the University of Baltimore for the Combating Overdose through Community Level Intervention Initiative Grant. The amendment has no fiscal impact. Total grant value remains at $233,457. Funding is through the University of Baltimore. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and I think this is just a logistical piece, so that, because there's no cost, this is a no-cost amendment. The contract maximum value remains at $233,457,000. So it's just a logistical piece that we're doing.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of an amendment increasing funding of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for COVID-19 vaccination operations. The amendment value is $600,000. The total agreement value is now $3,400,000. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Excuse me. This will enable public health to continue providing vaccinations to the community. So it's basically more funds for more vaccinations.
For free vaccinations?
Yes.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of an amendment increasing funding, extending the duration, and modifying the scope of work of an agreement with Ride Connection to provide transportation services for residents of Clackamas County who are 60 years plus, or have a disability through the Transportation Reaching People program. The amendment value is $149,006 for 1 year. The total agreement value is increased to $212,601 for 3 years. Funding is through Oregon Special Transportation Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this agreement is specific to the rides for the Transportation Reaching People program, provides in either a lift-equipped minibus or minivans driven by paid staff. This amendment provides the second year of a 2-year grant funding that was awarded during the January 2021 application cycle.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, go ahead.
Item 6, approval of an amendment increasing funding, extending the duration, and modifying the scope of work of an agreement with Ride Connection to provide mileage reimbursement to volunteer drivers with the Transportation Reaching People program. Amendment value is $32,747 for 1 year. A total agreement value is now $95,654 for 3 years. Funding is through the Oregon Special Transportation Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this one's a little different. Same program, but this agreement specifically provides supportive funding for volunteer driver mileage reimbursement for rides volunteer drivers provide in their own vehicles. So that's the difference.
That's cool. Questions or comments? Seeing
Just
no, yeah, Paul?
Just one note. I know it's for 3 years, and so that would extend from today to 2 more years. So my statement is I want to make is that we will probably need some kind of adjustment if tolling is implemented in this area because it's going to affect everyone.
Thank you. Seeing no objections.
Item 7, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with Cascadia Health for Assertive Community Treatment Program Services. Grant value is $104,081.46 for 21 months. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, these services are designed for adults who have not responded well to traditional outpatient mental health services. Cascadia Health is a not-for-profit agency that delivers whole health care, integrated mental health and addiction services, and primary care.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 8, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with Cascadia Health for residential treatment services. Grant value is $108,000 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
And as the administrator said, this is for residential treatment services for eligible Clackamas County clients, same company, Cascadia Health.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl?
Rod, can you tell us how many beds Cascadia Health, in-house beds, they can provide for us?
I don't have that information with me, but I can get you that information.
Thanks, okay. Appreciate that.
Seeing no objections.
Item 9, approval of a motel hotel services contract with Durgesh LLC doing business as Econo Lodge Southeast for on-call hotel rooms for temporary housing participants. Contract value is $779,400 for 9 months. Funding through Supportive Housing Services and County American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, so this is a contract that you've heard a lot about over time. And so basically, this would extend the contract to provide up to 27 on-call hotel rooms for temporary housing for people experiencing homelessness. These rooms can also be used for emergency shelters during severe weather events, like our cooling and heating times. And basically, in anticipation of some questions, we want to let you know that payment of these rooms are on a as-needed basis and not paid in advance, because I think that was a question in the past that you wanted to make sure we weren't just giving money to these, that it's an as-used basis.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rod. Any further questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 10, approval of assignment addendums for contracts with Clackamas Women's Services, El Programa Hispano Cataloco, Greater New Hope Family Services, Impact Northwest, and Northwest Family Services from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. The assignment has no fiscal impact. Combined contract value remains at $2,984,012, funding through Supportive Housing Services Program. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this is one of those logistical pieces where we're assigning work from HAC over to a housing authority over to the new division, and basically the funds provide supportive housing services through the new division. So this is a logistical move over. It's moving it from one entity to another, but same service. Sorry for.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 11, approval of an amendment extending duration of a subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas Women's Services for the Improved Criminal Justice Response for Domestic Violence Program. The amendment extends the duration by 1 month. Grant value remains at $260,542. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this change or amendment extends the duration of the agreement to allow for additional time to provide service delivery impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that resulted in various positions being unfilled during portions of the project period. The project period extension was cleared by the funder on 7/22/22. So basically, it's an extension due to COVID.
Okay. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections? Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Rod. All of these consent items will go on your business meeting agenda for this Thursday. Next on the list, a performance Clackamas update on the self-sufficiency wage implementation team. Commissioners, we are updating you on your 10 strategic results over until the end of the calendar year, so this is the next one. For an update, presenters are Nancy Bush, County Operating Officer, Cindy Moore, Senior Economic Development Coordinator. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners, and thank you.
Welcome.
Am I on? Okay, thank you. So yes, we're here today to talk to you about one of the Performance Clackamas teams, and you'll be seeing us again in a few weeks. Today we are talking about Grow a Vibrant Economy as your strategic result. And the project we're working on, talking about today, is by 2026, 15% increase in jobs that meet the self-sufficiency standard wage in Clackamas County. And I have a guest here with me, and Cindy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. Again, Cindy Moore with the Office of Economic Development. Very pleased to be with you today to talk about our Performance Clackamas team around self-sufficiency wage implementation. As Nancy mentioned, the board goal is an increase of 15% in jobs that meet the self-sufficiency standard wage in Clackamas County. By definition, a self-sufficiency standard is a measure that calculates how much income a family must earn to meet their basic needs, with the amount varying by family composition and where they live. For purposes of this team, we are going with the self-sufficiency standard for Oregon report for 2021. And this includes the cost for housing, food, childcare, health insurance, transportation, taxes, and other miscellaneous expenses. So included in your packet today are highlights of some of the activities of the team. I do want to share that the team is comprised with representatives from our Office of Economic Development, H3S, DTD, and County Administration, along with partners from the Clackamas Workforce Partnership and the Oregon Employment Department. There's a lot of heavy lifting to do around this goal, and we're very appreciative of the partners. So with the highlights of the key activities that this team has been working on, we have been in contact with our local economists from the Oregon Employment Department, continuing to research the self-sufficiency standard wages, given the variety of household makeups in Clackamas County. The implementation team will be exploring tracking multiple household types. For today's discussion, our current definition of self-sufficiency wage for Clackamas County is $32.02 per hour, with an annual wage before taxes of $66,276. I'll say that one more time. Working definition, self-sufficiency wage for Clackamas County, $32.02, so $32.02 per hour, annual wage of $66,276. This represents one adult and one daycare or preschool age child. So those are the income that would need to suffice in Clackamas County to meet that goal. We've launched, in partnership with the Clackamas Workforce Partnership, which is our local investment board. We've launched the Quality Jobs Initiative, which is a blueprint for Clackamas County's companies who want to make improvements in their workforce. So having discussions with employers around what the complete package looks like to work for their companies, and that includes wages discussion. We have also worked with the Clackamas County workforce staff, this is county staff, to continue collaborations with the Oregon DHS District Number 15, providing employment and training services for TANF families and SNAP recipients through direct services for low-income residents. Partnership efforts with the Supporting Housing Services and Housing Authority of Clackamas County, along with our veterans housing partners, continues to ensure employment and training is available and accessible as wraparound services. The board also submitted a letter of support for the Good Jobs Challenge. So those are just a few of the highlights of the work of the team to date. I did want to share with you some of the data that we received. Our implementation team has a standing meeting, and we just met yesterday, and our local economist came into the discussion and shared just a few highlights that I wanted to make sure you were aware of as we're tracking these wages. Nearly 37% of the covered payroll employees in Clackamas County made less than $20 an hour, and 12.6% of these workers made less than $15 an hour. As reference, the total jobs in Clackamas County for Q3 of 2021 was 192,845. And I know I'm saying a lot of numbers today, and we can follow up with a memo that'll just specifically give these data points, but this is just for your information today. Of the 25% of the workers that made, over 25% of those workers made between $20 and $29 per hour. Over 36% of those workers made $30 or more an hour. Again, our goal with this implementation team is $32.02 an hour. So right now, as of the 192,000 people-ish that work in Clackamas County, 36% of those workers make over $30 an hour. Household makeups in Clackamas County, you might be wondering what those look like. In 2021, Clackamas County had a total household count of 161,945. households. 70% of these households were family households, and 30% were non-family households. When we look at all the households grouped together by income range, 12% of those households had incomes of less than $25,000. 27% of those households had an income of less than $50,000. 46% had incomes of $100,000 or more, and 28% of these households had children under the age of 18. A few highlights on the data that we're able to pull with the partnership through WorkSource Clackamas, and I want to specifically give a shout out to Lynn Wallace, who is our local economist. So pretty heavy data this morning. But then if we go back to the memo that was included in your packet, it calls out some of the partner outreach and activities and some of the barriers and challenges that this team is facing. One of which is the multiple ways that we can define self-sufficiency and household types in Clackamas County. As I mentioned, we are currently tracking one adult and one preschool-aged child, and there's a variety of ways in which you could define households. One adult, one child, two adults, two children, and the expansion is vast. For today's discussion, I just wanted to share that's where the team is today. We can certainly take your feedback on that. And, also the general cost of living continues to increase, making self-sufficiency wages difficult to define. We have some great sources that we'll be tracking year over year as this goal rolls out into 2025. So that's the data piece of the update from the implementation team.
You've put a lot of numbers at us. Can you make a memo of what you just repeated on Clackamas County households and send it to us?
Yes, ma'am.
So the board can have a reference. You anticipated some of my questions, but specifically, Gary, you won't like this. Clackamas County employees, are they making what the sufficiency wage is? Do you know?
We would have to pull that specific data.
Not all of them, no.
Yeah, because I track, and maybe the commissioners do too, the new job postings that come out, and many of them are $20 an hour starting out. And I don't know what happens in jobs interviews, and I don't know what happened under the hiring criteria, but I think there's always hope that you would make more than that. And so if the annual wage before taxes is $66,000, I've seen many, many job postings that do not pay that. Just a point of interest. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, thank you, Cindy. I'm not sure the I'm going to back up. I'll digress. A common concern that I'm hearing from folks is how can the economy or the employment rate be so good when there are all these open positions and everyone's had lack of help? So basically, there's a perception, and probably rightfully so, that the workforce has shrunk considerably. And so what's more important to me in this anomaly, if you will, is not looking at things solely as percentage, but also in total count. So we also know that the hourly income is increased, or the minimum wage is increased over time, and also a lot of companies are paying more than ever before. So I think three numbers that ought to be looked at side by side ought to be percentages like you've laid out. Also look at the total number of people employed and also the total payroll. And I think with those three numbers, we can probably derive a more accurate picture of what the employment market is. And so that's my statement. So my question is, as far as it relates to the goal, I'm looking at the top of page 3, by 2026, a 15% increase in jobs that meet the self-sufficiency standard in Clackamas County. Well, I guess the question is 15% increase in jobs from what point to what point is a one question I have, because the goal is kind of, the result there is kind of vague. And how are we doing on that, knowing that inflation and all these things are we progressing, or is inflation eating away at our goal?
I think that's a great question, and this baseline data that I presented today is going to give us what that foundation looks like so that we can be able to track year over year how our 15% increase is doing and what the barriers and challenges are based on the feedback we're receiving from our partner agencies.
So you think the goal was, or the strategic goal was written to suggest that it'd be a 15% increase each year?
I think that's a great question. It would be the board's goal, so I think I would ask for your feedback on that.
We wrote that goal. The Board of County Commissioners wrote that goal, and I'm just going to insert, that's a great question. So when we wrote the goal, I think maybe with our facilitator, it was intentional of the vagueness, because it would be easier to meet the target or take a look at what's going on. But Paul, or Commissioner Savas, makes a very good question to that. And we're going to be involved in more goal setting come this January. And the question that you asked about this is very good to help us in that process coming this January.
I would agree.
Yeah, if you can come back with some of those numbers, I'd like to see what that looks like. And I do know that at least my recollection of the goal setting was probably prior to this anomaly being the COVID and all of that. So I'd love to better understand how it's being interpreted and how we're doing based on that interpretation.
Absolutely, and this is our first update to the board around this goal, so we would welcome your feedback too. If there's any clarity that you could provide or ways in which you would like to see this information presented, we are all ears. Yep. Before I close, though, I do have a success story that I wanted to share, but we'll field your questions.
Just a moment, please. We have 3 people in the queue. Before we go to my commissioners, Gary Schmidt.
Yes, I'll clarify. So, yes, Commissioners, you set this goal. The base is 2021. You set this goal in 2021. It was a year into the pandemic. It was before inflation, though. You didn't see that coming. None of us did. But the base is 2021, and it's over 5 years that the self-sufficiency would grow by 15%. I remember you discussed a higher number, but with the facilitator, you felt that was way too high, so you kind of set a bar at 15%. So,
thank you.
When you have your goal update in January coming up, you can decide if you want to modify this or not. Thank you.
Or even keep the goal, we'll move on. Thank you. Cindy, before you conclude, I would like to go to the other 2 commissioners. Commissioner
Please.
Fisher?
Thank you, Chair Smith. Thank you for the update. I really appreciate all the information and the convening to look at this issue. We did a lot of work over the last few years on the prosperity collaboratives, which identified areas within the county based on census data and greatest need economically. And I'm interested to know how we could pair some of that information with the data that you represented, because my guess is that in the areas that we identified for the prosperity collaboratives, those might be areas that we would need to potentially focus efforts for increasing wages. And like one of the prosperity collaboratives worked on childcare, which we knew was a really important issue and continues to be today, and they made quite a bit of headway in that. But that was really important for their sense of moving up into prosperity, and the other areas being Estacada and then Canby. There was a lot of really good work done there to jump off from that I think really could fit in with this. You may be aware, I'm sure you're aware, I don't know if everyone else is aware, but the blueprint that's up on our website for Clackamas County, you can go onto that website and hone into really what are the factors that people, based on what percentage in a certain area is free and reduced school lunch, what's the all of those different kind of, what do you call them, social determinants of health or other kind of economic factors, we can really hone in on that, which is really how we came up with the Prosperity Collaborative, is based on income. But that's some really good, because countywide, there are areas, I bet if you look at some areas, you're going to see way bigger when you say this percentage has incomes over $100,000. You're going to see some areas off the charts of higher incomes and other areas that are very low. So for us as a board to really, even to see a map as to what these numbers look like in different areas of the county, which we may know anecdotally, but seeing the numbers really, and seeing a picture of it.
Guess those areas?
Oh, sure. Well, we did all the research back in the prior commission. Dan Chandler was lead on identifying those prosperity collaboratives, and there were really 5 areas that were really challenged. We chose 3 to focus on because 5 was too many. But it's good groundwork for, especially for this goal of looking at self-sufficiency wages.
It's a very good reminder because the database that we use to track this information just says specifically Clackamas County. To your point, our blueprint work plan will get us into the weeds, if you will, of each community and each area. So thank you for that reminder.
Okay. Commissioner Scholl.
Morning.
To increase payroll, we need to increase business prosperity in the marketplace. To do that, we need to stimulate conditions for business growth, and we need to be able to attract new businesses to Clackamas County. I think one of the things we need to make sure we're doing in the county is to lobby our state legislature, our representatives and our senators, to make sure they understand that in Clackamas County, for us to see average payroll grow, we need to make sure taxes don't grow, that we increase land availability to business, that we do something, and we're working on it, to bring down the cost of housing to our residents, to fight inflation, to be considerate of the high cost of transportation. And so we have Clackamas County workforce, we have our city business associations we need to work through. We need to stimulate the potential in Clackamas County for businesses to be successful, to come here, to start up a new business, and those things will drive what they're able to pay in terms of an hourly rate for their people. So I just leave you with that thought. Okay, that's my idea on how to increase average payroll in the county.
Excellent point, Commissioner Stoll. And actually, you're teeing us up nicely because we have a business-friendly environment implementation team that will be coming before you on October 25th. So
Well,
there's a great intersection between these 2 implementation teams.
you owe me $1 for that lead-in.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Cindy, would you like to conclude?
I would be honored to. So we have a success story we wanted to leave you with today, and this was submitted by Jennifer Harvey from Children, Family, and Community Connections. We had a client drop by a few weeks ago to let us know that she'd been hired to begin working on the Clackamas County Courthouse. She's already received the blueprints for performing some pre-work to ready the property for the courthouse starting this September. Her story is very inspirational as it shows how the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and H3S work together with the residents of Clackamas County. She pointed out that there has been some irony to being part of building of the new courthouse, and that she has been through the court system multiple times, ending up in the Clackamas County Jail multiple times. Facing a sentence of 80 months in prison, she was offered an opportunity to go to the Clackamas Substance Abuse Program, CSAP, instead of prison. While at CSAP in 2020, she turned her life around and worked her 12-step program, determining that, quote, nothing bad would happen from taking the steps required as part of the program. She worked with Children, Family, and Community Connections STEP Employment Program staff and continued working multiple jobs as businesses opened and closed during the pandemic. After release from CSAP, she continued her recovery journey in a local recovery home. The STEP assisted with her rent payments. Court-mandated obligations made career advancements challenging, but she kept going, working part-time jobs around the various requirements of drug court. After graduating drug court, she entered an accelerated pre-apprenticeship trades program called Constructing Hope. She is now an excavator operator, and her story has come full circle. She regained custody of her daughter, is earning an excellent wage and a stable career, and recently purchased a home in Gladstone. In the client's own words, she shared that none of this, get a little choked up on this one. In the client's own words, she shared that none of what she has now would have been possible without the treatment services, housing, and employment services she received from Clackamas County. Her current employment also touches on the Construction Career Pathways Project, C2P2, requirements for large capital projects adopted by your Board of County Commissioners. In closing, this client shared that the irony of being in the court system to building the courthouse is not lost on her. She has completely transformed her life and the life of her daughter through programs operated by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and H3S. Thank you for your time this morning.
So that's a great story.
Very, very heartfelt. That story needs to get out, Gary. We need to post that someplace.
Yes, if you could get that to us, in our emails, I'd just like to
Absolutely.
just almost read it back to myself, so thank you.
I had to read it a few times to get through it myself. Very proud.
As we move forward on numerous projects that we're trying to implement, well, this is the success story we all can point to. This is our goal. This is what we're trying to achieve. It's not always going to be 100% successful with every person, because every person is different. But boy, this is just something just wonderful for sharing. Thank you, Cindy.
Yes. Thank you.
Good report.
Thank you.
Gary.
All right, next, Metro System Facilities Plan Roundtable Invitation. Mike Besner and Eben Polk from Transportation and Development will present. There was a memo in your packet. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. It is a pretty simple request to see if a board member wants to attend a roundtable, and Eben Polk will fill you in with the details.
Okay, thanks. Good
Please
morning,
introduce
Chair.
yourself.
Certainly will do that. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Eben Polk. I'm the manager for the county's Sustainability and Solid Waste Program, which is part of Transportation and Development. And we're here this morning, I think pretty briefly, just to support a discussion among you about participation in an upcoming roundtable to which a Metro would like to invite a commissioner to participate on the topic of the development of the Regional Systems Facility Plan for Garbage and Recycling Infrastructure. Noting that as of the date that we provided this memo, we hadn't heard when this roundtable would be, but since then we have heard that it looks like it's going to be October 31st from 9 to 11 a.m.
Is that a joke? It's Halloween?
It is.
That's what I've heard.
My God, you didn't.
It's not
Yeah.
a joke.
No.
It is Halloween.
Yeah,
Just saying.
no. I haven't heard if costumes are requested.
I could attend this wearing my witch outfit.
So that's a Monday.
Yes, sir. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No, not at all. So, this project is an important one for the long-term planning for infrastructure, for garbage, recycling, household hazardous waste collection, and drop-off opportunities, as well as self-haul opportunities in our region for, in the future. And so it's also a project that the implications of that infrastructure for our disposal fees are meaningful, and that's a topic that you've expressed, a lot of interest in the last couple of years. So it's important to highlight that for you. Right now, Metro is in the stage where they've recently approved a values and outcomes document for this project. That was something that I believe was brought to MPAC some months ago, and now they're working on the gap analysis phase. So that's what we have for you, and happy to support a discussion about commissioner attendance at this roundtable.
So we needed a commissioner to attend this. I'm going to open it up to anybody who wants it. If none of my commissioners want to do it, I can by default. Just letting you know, this is a very busy time for some of our commissioners, more busy than the others. Commissioner Scholl.
I'd be happy to do it if the board wants that, and I will go in costume if you want me to.
Yeah, we should probably ask if that's going to be.
We take no position on that part of it.
You could go as a pirate.
Oh, yeah. That'd be fun.
Is that okay, Paul?
Yeah, it has a tie-in to MPAC, and that's what Commissioner Scholl is assigned to, so I'm okay with that. If it was on a different day of the week, and I don't know if this particular one's on a Monday, and they're all going to be on a Monday, but that's a loaded day for me, so it sounds like Commissioner Scholl can accommodate that. So do we need a motion?
Gary, do we need a motion?
Let's formalize it, please, yes.
Okay, Paul, I'll accept a motion.
Sure. I move that we select Commissioner Scholl to be the Metro, the representative on this Metro garbage and recycling facilities plan process.
I'll second that motion since you are the one that's being. Commissioner Savas has made a motion for Commissioner Mark Scholl to attend the Sustainability and Solid Waste Program Roundtable discussion. And I have seconded that motion. Commissioner Fisher, Commissioner Scholl has agreed to go to Metro for the one meeting on October 31st.
Excellent.
And then we are now voting on that
I
motion.
got it. I'm on it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tony?
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Schultz.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Commissioner Scholl, for volunteering to do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump ahead one item. Commissioners, I want to confirm if you would like to take a winter recess, as you have for many, many years. It would be the last 2 weeks of the calendar year. Many people are on vacation. You deserve a vacation. So the proposal would be December 19th through January 2nd. You'd be on recess 2 weeks. You'd be back for business on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. Is that okay, Commissioners?
Commissioners, discussion. Mark?
Yeah, that gives me plenty of time to do my Christmas shopping for Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you. I'll send you a list now. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I would indeed like to, what, do we have so day periods, or, I mean,
Yes.
from day to day? What's the suggestion?
So it'd be Monday, December 19th through Monday, January 2nd would be your recess weeks. You'd return on Tuesday, January 3rd.
So January 2nd is our January 1st holiday. But it's
Correct.
taken on Monday, so we would convene on the 2nd.
On Tuesday, January 3rd would be your
Excuse
day
me.
back.
Yes,
Yeah.
I meant to say that,
Yeah,
Tuesday,
yeah.
January 3rd. Probably could be a loaded day for us commissioners with, being off that long. You never know what's going to happen. I'm okay. You're okay. Gary, I think we're okay with it.
Excellent, thank you very much. Back an item above, safety off the streets update. We have finally an update for you on this program and a discussion. I invite the team from Health, Housing, Human Services. They are Fahid Brown and Adam Brown. No relation, right?
Right.
Okay.
No relation, but we
No
do
wor-
go by the Brown brothers. when-
Okay, the Brown brothers are here, please, go ahead.
Ooh, brothers from another mother.
That's right. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Adam Brown here, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, and Human Services. I'm supporting Vahid with this safety off the streets discussion as the Deputy Director to whom our housing-related services roll up to within the department.
And good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Administrator Schmidt. Coming back to you on our request for information related to safety off the streets. So stepping back a little bit of recap, we had a conversation with the board about safety off the streets programming and the continuum of services kind of encompassed by that. Looked at different models operating safety off the streets in the region and nationally, and at the board's direction, the department issued a request for information to determine the feasibility and interest across the community in supporting any or all of that range of models of safety off the street. So this was a fact-finding request for information that was intended to elicit what's out there in the community in terms of interest, availability, the wherewithal to deliver on any of those different models, from rest areas to safe parking programs to other villages to non-congregate shelter, congregate shelter, and so forth. And we have received and kind of summarize these 10 proposals in this memo for you. What we found, I think the takeaway we've in the memo at the second page, the responses to the RFI, I think our summary takeaway is that there's not any interest expressed from providers in the response to this RFI to some of the components of that continuum. No safe rest area, no safe parking area, no facility-based congregate shelter proposals. A lot of proposals around villages and use of motels for non-congregate shelter. So that was the key takeaway from that exercise in terms of all of our responses. And in terms of next steps for this discussion, we are pursuing a Project Turnkey Award, and we've begun conversations with the Oregon Community Foundation as of yesterday to start working on the due diligence steps with the priority properties identified by the board. So we are working to continue to invest in non-congregate motel-based shelter as a model. And I think staff are continuing to try to identify appropriate sites for the development of other villages akin to the Clackamas County Veterans Village. So that's the context and the background from the outcome of our RFI, just bringing this for your information and discussion.
Great. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah. So thank you, Vahid, for your proposal here today, or not really a proposal, but the summary of what's here. If there's a little bit of frustration, it's not directed towards you, but it's just directed towards the situation. When I brought this issue of a shelter over a year ago, trying to get maybe ahead of and looking at some of what I think is the low-hanging fruit as far as opportunities to actually do two of the areas in which there really has no response, and there's a prime property we can do that with, and that would be the safe parking sites, and also the congregate shelter site. There's one particular facility that we have access to in a roundabout way that we could do and implement that. I just got, we know we have people that are living in, unfortunately, that are living in their cars, trucks, and motorhomes today, and a safe parking site would put them in a far safer place than it would be where they are today, which is obviously dynamic in and of itself. So that's important to me, and also having facilities such as, for sanitation, so forth, on a facility like that, similar to the model in Eugene that we looked at, hopefully we can do that. And also on the congregate shelter, with the inclement weather turning around, it's a year later. We're no farther ahead on that. I talked to the department that owns a couple of the properties that would be ideal. Again, we in the umbrella of the county, we have a couple of these properties, and I'm anxious to move on them. We got the resources to do that, and I just hope that we can help expedite that and in some way. We've got to do something different and to move that along. I appreciate the work on the Project Turnkey. It's an opportunity to leverage some state money to acquire that, and I get that. What I was struck by, it's not in the packet here, but I did see some of those RFIs. What I was struck by, and it's really a question, is it, when some of these nonprofits offer really the services to really be a subcontractor or maybe a third party with the motel, there's a lot of those that offered or proposed that in their RFIs. And it seems to me that navigate. I could see the value of navigating that for all different communities, communities of color, whatnot, marginalized communities, people that don't have maybe that access. I can see the advantage of the navigation piece, but would it make more sense really not to have a third party or a fourth party, because that just eats away at the resources for some of those hotel rooms. And so that's a question, followed up by one other question that's related, and that is do we plan on expanding the shelter, the hotel model shelter, beyond whatever we acquire? If we acquire 90 units of hotels and we purchase them tomorrow, hypothetically, is there going to be need and ask for others to do more? Because it almost defeats the purpose to some degree if it's expensive, which gets back to the point I tried to make earlier about acquiring apartments or apartment structures or so forth, because they're cheaper and they're already built. So a lot of questions there, but can you help me with that?
Yeah, and can I return to your first question, Commissioner Savas, about navigation? Just want to make sure I understand. So when you describe navigation, I'm thinking the navigation services to support people moving from the shelter to permanent housing. Is that what you mean?
Well, I meant the navigation for, let's say if it's a Spanish-speaking individual that can't communicate in English very well, the navigation to helping that person, some with those speaking skills, to get them to a shelter or a facility or the services needed. So that's what I meant.
Yeah, and I agree, and we are investing in kind of what you mentioned, like a third party, a separate group of agencies and providers to do kind of system engagement work, outreach, street outreach to people experiencing homelessness, outreach within communities of color to identify people who are experiencing housing insecurity, and work to connect people to our system of care, including available shelter beds. So yes, that isn't something that we only kind of assume that our shelter provider is going to provide, is going to know what is all the need in the community. That's systemic coordination the county provides.
Okay.
And then there was another question, and I forgot it, I'm sorry.
The other question was, do we expect to go beyond the 90 units? And if so, we need a different strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah, so currently we're focused on turnkey and hopefully a successful outcome of that. And the board has identified 2 priority properties for us to begin working with. As I said, we've moved into that process with Oregon Community Foundation. As I mentioned in a previous session with the board, I think that the department will continue to see the need for on-call services to respond to emergencies for sheltering activities. That may mean a continued use of on-call shelter contracts with motels for non-congregate placement. But this is a larger question of the scale of the need, I think.
Yeah, I just think we need to have a very strategic approach as to where we look. Let's just say we leverage the turnkey project and the funds and we maximize that. We're still going to have we'll be facing the same exact scenario again as we expand that. So how we expand it and where and make it as cost effective as possible lends me to believe that we should be looking at things other than hotels, because that's the most expensive model.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple questions. Mr. Savas mentioned 90 units. Is that something that's been codified by this board, or is that just an example?
Current conditions?
Yeah, it's an example that comes from correspondence between Commissioner Savas and staff, and we've mentioned it briefly in a previous session. 51 units are under contract by the department in continued operations, and there's about 40 units that we can think of as units that are available to our partners to utilize hotel rooms on an on-call basis or on a short stay basis for clients they serve.
So what Commissioner Savas is, what you're saying is, to get the people out of those units is about 90. We would need to supplement that with 90 in more stable, traditional, transitional type housing. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just word it a little bit differently. It's similar. So let's just say that we purchase 90 hotel units, and they're now owned by the housing authority or whatever division of the county. And with the nonprofits that are offering those services want to or have needs and identify folks that go beyond that 90 count. Let's say it's 130 or 150, how do we navigate that? And is it wiser to look at lower cost models such as apartment buildings versus hotels. That's where I was going.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. I just was wondering where 90 came from. If we needed to be thinking about it in terms of that number is what, yeah. So I was, over Memorial Weekend, we traveled over to Bend and south to Sun River, and we stayed a night in a hotel in Bend. I think it was a Holiday Inn. And it was kind of a last minute in this particular one before we went to our final destination. And I noticed on the street, just west of this hotel, there was a street that ran, and then it went into vacant land on the west side of Bend. And for at least 2 miles, there was one RV after another parked on the street. And it struck me, you don't think the city of Bend is having a homeless crisis. And these people were staying there, and we drove down. In fact, I took a video. I was so struck by this because you think of Bend as more of a recreation, people coming from California with high incomes and so forth. And then I noticed some stations like porta potties with hand washing and dumpsters for garbage collection. And then I realized this must be a sanctioned place to park their RVs. And there were different types of conditions and so forth. But I was on the 3rd floor, and they had a fence around the hotel. And so for the limited time I was there, morning, noon, or night, we'd come in and out. I noticed one particular RV. And I'll never forget this. It was a little bit better condition. I never did see anybody inside of it. But this person would come and leave in a pickup, and the pickup had an identifier sign on it. He had worked for the city of Bend, and he was living in that RV because it came in at night and it left in the morning. And that was my conclusion without knowing anything. So if you go back to our previous discussion on a sustainability wage of $66,000, we have some real big fat issues. And maybe it's his choice. Maybe he's single, but this RV was in better condition than this. And, that's his choice. I fully support choice. And maybe it's a temporary situation, situations led himself to do that. But I thought, holy cow, this is the city of Bend that you just don't, and we're on our way to Sun River where, you're not going to see a drop of that over there. And so it's just a point I want my commissioners to be aware of on that. So this board, as far as I know, have not discussed a place to park vehicles. I don't know if we have a place to park vehicles. Have we looked, Gary? I know, and you have these wonderful pictures in here from other jurisdictions. I don't like parking on a 2-mile, 3-mile long street. I think that would need a place, and we're assuming that they park there for the night and then they leave during the day, because this situation was not like that. Gary?
The phrase car camping is the wrong phrase, but the board has discussed this previously, and we've worked with H3S and other local churches, for example, and did some permitting changes, but we also there were some concerns in the community about that as well.
Well, that was a big, extremely controversial, from what I understand, from the last Board of County Commissioners, which I watched a bit on that, and I understood what the previous board was trying to do in that, and it met with huge amount of resistance. But times have changed now. I don't know. I don't know if that's even where this board is going to go. We have so many balls in the air. We're trying to juggle so many programs. I'm not advocating for that. Thank you, Gary. We have 2 more commissioners. First, Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, yesterday I had a very interesting meeting with Adam Brown and Rod Cook. We talked about some of these issues and some of my concerns and questions about the housing first concept and other ideas. One thing about the request for information that came back, like you mentioned earlier, they're motel heavy. And I believe we need a full array of options. You have 5 different types of supporting housing that you requested RFIs on. I believe we need one of each, or some of each. But the safety parking site, I think, is very important. A safe rest area, important. I also was happy to see the Home Builders Foundation and Do Good Multnomah. They had the tiny house village. They're looking at, I think, tax lot 1200 next door to our Veterans Village. I would love to see that happen soon. Now, my question for you, I'm sure you're going to get back to us later on this, is when you take the RFIs that came in and identify the ones you want to encourage, are you going to ensure that we do have a option for the folks that need to be housed, maybe at least one of the different 5 paradigms of your projects? Because, like we mentioned yesterday in the meeting, the people who need housing support, they come in everything from A to Z. Some of them would like a hotel room. Others would like a place to park their RV. Others would like a place to park their car just for overnight, a place to park safely, use a restroom, maybe some other facilities, and then go to work in the morning. And then others would like to have the option for a tiny house village. So I'm excited to get your ideas for what the next step is from going from concept to actual detailed plans on some of these projects. I believe that time is not on our side. The faster we can move to actual ready projects, the better. And the other thing, too, of course, is that money doesn't grow on trees unless you happen to work at Washington, D.C., so we need to get as much potential for getting people off the street with the least amount of money. So that's a hard nut to crack, too. But thanks for your work. We're moving ahead. Don't give up. Charge ahead. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Scholl. The model that I just want to make my commissioners aware that C4 has been talking about and trying to plan a trip down to Eugene once again to look at some of the models that have been employed down there, safe parking being one of them, on the safe parking sites. The model that the board discussed way back about the parking was on some faith-based organizations with maybe 1, 2, or 3, not a large number. The model in Eugene and what's pictured here is one model in Vancouver. Very similar, really, and I think the need out there is greater than 1, 2, or 3. I'm not sure how many faith-based or neighborhood issues there would be, but it would certainly be, again, low-hanging fruit to find a facility that has the restroom facilities and so forth, or, you know, whatever sanitation is needed for something like that, but that have a good buffer away from neighborhoods. That's been one of what I've heard quite a bit that really results in the success versus the neighborhood pushback, because, you know, we're not ideally not putting them in neighborhoods, but putting them in an area that has the capacity. And there's a couple sites, again, that we have in accessible, 3 actually, I think that this could work.
Really? Don't keep it a secret. Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you for bringing all of this. It's really remarkable that there are so many groups out there, nonprofits, organizations, reaching out with ideas and ways this is incredible for Clackamas County. This is a real victory. We have been community-based organization poor for many, many years, and through this effort and a lot of work from our staff doing outreach, which really, you know, unsung heroes that don't get mentioned as to the success of this. I also want to acknowledge that because this board chose not to utilize or front the homeless services dollars at the beginning of the fiscal year, you had to do amazing lift in the people that were sheltered in the hotel motel shelter for those to can stay there with the money that was allocated and to get them into permanent housing. And that was an all-hands-on-deck effort to make sure we didn't displace people through the COVID crisis. And so I just want to acknowledge the extra amount of stress and work on our staff and applaud the work that was done. So the question that I have, and I don't know how it's going out there, and I know we've only had really just a few months of being able to access a full array of resources. But do we or will we have process data as a person is identified asking for support for maybe the journey or the amount of time that it takes to get stably housed? It may be that, like what percentage of the people that are unsheltered really require a temporary place to be versus can go straight into something that may be available? What's that journey? Do we know what it will be like? Do we have an idea? Because I would hate to see us use so much of our resources on shelter when we could actually stably house. I want to make sure we are making the appropriate investments and really rely on your expertise to help guide us.
Yeah, and thanks, Commissioner. And we do have that data. We do track the length of time it takes for a household at every point. So from connecting with coordinated entry to being served in a program, and that being served in a program might be being served in street or housing navigation. So you're still experiencing homelessness, but you're being served with someone who's helping you find housing. And then the length of time in that program until achieving a lease up, a housing placement. Length of time housed, numbers of returns to homelessness. These are all things that we track in our homeless management information system. And we are rolling out and implementing new standards for those expectations we have of our providers about those timeframes. So with all of our shelter and shelter-specific programming, the goal we're looking towards is 45 days. As that's the average length of stay. We want to see households accessing and utilizing shelter for 45 days on average, and then moving from that shelter placement into permanent housing. And that is that's going to be that's a stretch goal for our system, but it's one that we've made that expectation clear across the system. So we're monitoring these things and continually kind of like communicating these numbers back to our providers about. This is where we are. These households are taking this long to achieve a permanent housing placement. What are the barriers? How can we support? What are the resources you need additionally to make this time frame much shorter? But so, long story short, yes, we do collect that data, and yes, we do use it to drive improvements in our programming.
That's great. So about the average need is 45 days in some sort of transitional shelter at this point of our service delivery.
That's where we would like the system to be, is that someone who's in shelter is in shelter for an average of 45 days, and then they've moved on to housing.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
In those 45 days, are they receiving treatment and supports, supervision?
Yeah, see, these are all supported shelters. So these are programs where there's staff support, connecting folks to mainstream resources, medical support, all that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I appreciate the reminder of sorts that Commissioner Fisher raised, and I just want to point out that in that moment in time, there were several things that were underway. Number one, we just had a report from the Metro Auditor saying that wasn't sure what the range of funds would be, whether it be between $14 million or $32 million, and questioning, Metro's own numbers. Also, the fact that as we scrambled after the messaging from the Metro Finance Director, COO, or not COO, but the CFO, was that the monies would not be coming in as projected. But in our staff at the time, I think even Vahid was involved in that, put together an estimate using the CFO's chart that maybe we would get $2 million a month at that time. So that's a snapshot of what was occurring then. When we realized that it wasn't $2 million a month, it was just $100,000 or $200,000 a month, we and myself and others, talked with Metro, and Jill was offered What if, from I won't mention the staff person's name at Metro, I think her heart was in the right place. What if we just gave you the $24 million and loaned you the $24 million? Well, that turned out, we jumped on that only to find out that that $24 million offer really wasn't an offer. It was an idea, but the Metro Council wouldn't do that, which prompted the conversation with myself and a Metro councilor to get a $5 million loan, which we did, and also secured an additional $5 million loan, and staff did their best to advance and build and ramp up the staffing and everything necessary. And I mentioned that to say that, it really is, here we are today, and I don't know, and maybe it's a question to Commissioner Fisher, is that the implementation plan seemed to not really focus on shelters that much, and there was about this housing first. And what we have learned in this region, and I think Portland's hearing that loud and clear, and the news agencies are reporting on it, that a substantial number, if not a majority, of the people on the streets that are offered housing don't want it and aren't accepting it, which means that they need those transitional services and the sheltering that we're really talking about here today. So if there's, the question to maybe Commissioner Fisher is, do we support as a board, there's only 4 of us here today, not 5, do we support really and recognize that there's a need for transitional sheltering in a way that helps people transition eventually to permanent housing, but they need to have that lift. They need to have the mental health and the drug and alcohol treatment necessary to get there. I mean, a question, my colleague, a respectful question.
Yeah, so I really rely on the expertise of staff. I know that the law requires to provide a continuum of options for people if they are to not reside on publicly owned property. That's Martin v. Boise or Boise v. I can't remember the case name. I've done a lot of learning from other jurisdictions, especially down in Southern California, where there have been lawsuits regarding the jurisdictions trying to remove people. So I've been a strong advocate for a continuum of services that are actually options for people. And what we know from talking to people who are unsheltered is that congregate shelter, where there's a bunch of beds lined up in a space where people can arrive at night but have to leave in the morning, where there's no place for their items or they cannot bring their pets, those are not options that many people want to take advantage of. We know that. So I am thrilled with this proposal of when they say non-congregate or single, what is the word that's used, single? Anyway, I'm not finding it now, but it's different terms throughout these proposals where people have a sense of dignity, a sense of privacy, and they feel safe, because there have been reports of some shelters where there are sexual assaults or people don't feel safe. And that is not the type of continuum I would support in Clackamas County. But I don't think we need that. I think we have options that here in these proposals, and we're definitely on the right track. What I don't want to see, I want to see our goal of people being stably housed. Could see if we just invested everything in temporary shelter, that wouldn't be the appropriate option. It really needs to be a balance. And as we move through and see how this is going, and keeping the data and looking at it and being nimble. Being nimble is very important to be able to shift based on what we're seeing is out there. And so that would be my answer, Commissioner Savas. Hopefully that clears up any
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think really what's suggested here are, different models, different options, and not one size fits all. And I think some people will be inclined maybe to live in their car. Some people may be inclined to live in a shelter facility like the Veterans Village with huts or whatever it may be. And then some people may want to choose to live in, temporarily in a congregate shelter and hotels or apartments and so forth, and into that. So I think that we need, and I think that's what's being learned right now in Portland, is that not one size fits all and not investing in one fits all. So I just think that what's being offered here is a series of things, and, I want to tell a story. I got to tell this story. This is fascinating, and it just kind of tells you about, we can't really judge, we shouldn't be judging people that are homeless or why they're homeless. A friend of mine, he and his wife, very successful people, helped their daughter through college. She got her master's degree. She's successful. She moved to a town, I won't say which, in Washington State. And she was in an apartment, and working and successful. And she just did the math and realized there's no way that she can ever save for a home with the math of what she was making. So she chose to purchase an RV and live in the RV, and whatever years, even though her family would help her, she was independent enough on her own to raise the money and live in her RV, and that's what she's doing today. There are several examples of that because they want to get ahead of the game, and paying $1,800 a month is $1,800 a month thus saved, granted a little bit of money cost for the RV. And that's what she's doing today, and she's happy. Even though her parents will purchase a home for her, she wants to do it on her own.
Kind of like my Bend story of the worker from Bend, yeah. Yeah, that is, like I say, it's a choice, and people will adapt to the economic conditions. Anything else, Evan?
Yeah, and I would suggest that in the long run, there's a chance we can have it both ways. And what I mean by that is that we know shelter isn't the solution to homelessness, and shelter is an expensive intervention type. But in the short term, we actually have a lot of resources, including capital resources, to make investments to pull down the unit cost of a shelter bed, right? Buy a hotel so that what we're left with is the ongoing operating expenses, which, to your point, Commissioner Savas, about leasing motels, that's an expensive intervention type. If we have the asset, now we're talking operations and maintenance, pulls down that unit cost. In the short term, we can increase the throughput to the cheaper long-term solution of putting people in permanent supportive housing options. So I want the board to consider, in the short term, can we kind of have it both ways by making this capital investment, but then redirecting the resources in the long term in these more cost-effective interventions? So that's the ideal, right? As we increase the throughput in the short term, get the money out to the community, meet the urgent community need, and put people in the permanent housing solutions in the long run at a cheaper per unit cost. So I think it's a both and it's in the short term prioritizing, yes, we need shelter intervention types on this continuum, right? Probably Safe Park, more villages, probably more hotels. And by using the one-time resources we have now to build that capacity, we can also achieve this long-term goal of putting people in cheaper long-term solutions. So I want to encourage us to think about it as a both and in using the short-term capital resources we have to make those strategic investments. And maybe in the long run, then we pull down the amount of money we're committing to shelter operations expenses and redirect that towards housing placement or retention or supportive housing. So I think we can have it both ways.
Great. Thank you. This has been a great conversation. Keep that in mind and don't let us forget. Any other questions on this particular topic? Thank you both for coming forward with a very good report.
Thank you.
So the two immediate next steps are the Project Turnkey and then the Veterans Village site next door. You're already doing some urban renewal amendments to that. As soon as that's done, you can direct us to move forward on something at that site. So.
Great. Gary,
Okay.
what's next?
Thank you. Next, your business meeting agenda review for this Thursday's meeting, September 29th, 2022, 10 a.m. Entirely consent agenda of all the items you approved today.
Thank
If you have any questions, let me know. The last item is Commissioner Communications.
Commissioners, there is a 11:30 luncheon. I don't know who's attending that. Who's attending that? Would you like to go first on Commissioner Communications?
Sure. I'll make it quick. This Thursday, the Association of ONC Counties, the board, meets. I'll be missing it because I got to stay back here for a quorum, okay, on Thursday.
Sorry about that.
They'll be discussing their search for an executive director, overview of the secure rural schools issue, litigation issues, and some issues about bridges. Then on Wednesday, 5 o'clock, I'll have the impact meeting. We will discuss factors of homelessness and look at regional winter shelter responses, a proposed draft for the urban growth boundary exchange issue, and then a regional pricing policy development for the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. And then this afternoon, Commissioner Savas and I have a meeting on the short-term rentals, which I look forward to.
Short-term rentals.
He and I are going to meet with some STR experts to get some ideas about, to present to the board later on about
Great.
STRs.
Thank you for your efforts on that. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I had a really nice bring your own lunch down to the Senior Citizens Council of Clackamas County to learn more about what services they provide. And it was really great meeting with a couple of their board members and their executive director. Many of us may not know that that organization, and it's partially funded from our, hey, before you go, Commissioner Scholl, I want to make sure you get this invitation. It is an invitation to the Senior Citizens Council of Clackamas County, invites you to throw away the evening at Blue Ox Axe Throwing, which is in Oregon City on September 29th from 4 to 7. That they are a really, and pass this on down to Commissioner Savas, really wonderful organization that do incredible work for seniors who need help with, it might just be maintaining their independence with some support in check writing or managing finances. It's really a program that provides some pretty intensive case management and support, keep seniors in their homes, and they also do, for those that may need a little extra support, they provide some guardians there, they're professional guardians that support people that aren't able to make their own financial decisions. And it's a great program. So I encourage my commissioners to get more familiar. I know that their board members would love to hear from all of you. I felt so special that I was asked to come to a meeting to learn about them, and I'm happy to pass along this invitation to the board. The next thing I want to talk about, I know we want to get out of here to get to the Oregon City Business Alliance, but tomorrow, gosh, time, it's Wednesday tomorrow, isn't it? Because today is Tuesday. So we are having District 8 here. Really need to talk about what's happening with Measure 110 and opportunities for us to coalesce around what we're seeing in our communities and how that's failing, that measure is failing when it comes to providing accountability and increasing some challenges in our community. And along those lines, the discussion of detox for people who are needing to withdraw from substances. Really, what is that looking like? We're going to hear from all three counties as to where we all are and look at potential opportunities for collaboration. And I know that Chair Smith is going to be there for as long as she can, then she's got to go off to something else, but hopefully I believe we set the timing so you could be there for the most important discussion about the regional collaboration that we will be engaging in. And so that is what I have as far as, one other thing. The White House is having a hunger conference tomorrow, and I was listening to my CNN podcast this morning as I was getting ready. And sure enough, the White House Hunger Conference was on CNN. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really kind of a big deal. Because as the chair of the Human Services and Education Committee for the National Association of Counties, I will be participating, could not make it there to be there in person because of the obligations we have here, but will be virtual. And some good things are on the agenda there, as I learned from CNN, as far as reducing hunger, making that a priority, which I think we all know, being at the local level, with all the food boxes we've delivered, especially during COVID, and with the efforts that we have undertaken and the collaborations and making sure children are fed in our community, we know what a priority that is. So more to come on that. I will be participating when I'm not absolutely participating in our county business here with our land use hearing and so forth. So that is my update.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. And if you need to go, please go on to your obligations. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, well, thank Commissioner Fisher for the invitation. Unfortunately, I will be out of town. My daughter got married this weekend, and I have another family wedding. I'm going to flying out tomorrow and be back this weekend. So it was great to see a lot of folks and family from around the country, and a lot of my family are involved in either mental health treatment or really in the services and working for governments and working for private and nonprofits as well. So it was fascinating to hear regionally and nationwide about some of the very similar problems that are around in this country. So we are not alone. And again, a lot of input, a lot of learned lessons. I find it fascinating. So I really appreciate, frankly, I think it's so valuable to talk to other jurisdictions about what they're doing and look at models that are working, talk to folks in models that aren't working. You learn a lot from what's not, and you learn a lot from what does. So thank you for all. Sorry I can't be here, and the burden that might be for you on the 3 days or 2 days here of the week, business week that I'll be gone. But I will be back on Monday, ready to go, and look forward to continuing this conversation on this task. I do have one question, and that is, we had a great session just now with staff on this, and Gary, you kind of summed it up in a project or two, perhaps. But I'd like to expand that conversation into, I don't know how we best do it, to talk about a couple other models there that we don't have a solution for, and I talked about earlier. I didn't want to be vague, but I do want to make sure I'm being sensitive. I follow protocols about a couple properties that we could look at for whether it's car, RV kind of facilities or whatnot that we can utilize in a safe way. So however you want to tee that up, I just want to put that out there.
Okay, got it.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Savas. Thank you for the invitation. I'm booked most of Thursday afternoon and evening. I'll try to stop by. Last minute invitations are very difficult for me. I just want to thank everybody for the good discussion and issues that we discussed today. I have no further comments, and this meeting is adjourned.